topic on what the future holds for all of us in the coming generations. I am thrilled to have with us Ankit Kedia, who is joining us from Bangalore in India. And for his bio, I thought I would pick out something from his LinkedIn that I happened to steal from his LinkedIn profile. I'm going to read it out. It says, "We love climate, deep tech, fintech. We love a good conversation. We love meeting founders. We love the impact our startups enable. We love us, and we love Capital A." So, introducing to all of you the founder and lead investor of Capital A, who is also an MBA from the SPJ Institute of Management and Research. But more than his professional accolades, I just want to say that Ankit is also a brilliant individual, deeply passionate about music. If you don't find him looking up companies and following the markets, he's going to be with his garage band and rolling out some beautiful tunes. He's also just a beautiful human being and a terrific friend. So thank you, Ankit Kedia, for doing this. Truly appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, Vibha, and thank you for having me here.
Terrific. Okay, so Ankit, as you know, we've been speaking to various experts as we're going deeper into this topic. From your vantage point as a venture capitalist, how do you see the future, and why is this conversation even necessary? Right? Why do we need to talk about the future? Why keep your pulse on the future?
Yeah, I think the very premise of being a venture capitalist is to be able to underwrite your investments in something which is completely futuristic in nature. And one of the reasons why you see the American and European investors so much more ahead of the game is because they are able to foresee some things which even sometimes the founders aren't able to. I mean, with all due respect. But just imagine what the world today would have been without the advent of, say, an Uber or an Airbnb or any of these new age fintech firms that are making our lives so ridiculously easy. But I think more importantly, keeping a pulse on future creates comfort around anticipation. We are able to anticipate better. We know what's going to happen in the next, at least in the foreseeable 2 or 3 years, because even the generation 4 years ago is completely different from what it is today. 4 years ago, the word AI was pretty much restricted to some very specialized use cases like medical or engineering or telecom. But now you see the use of AI. I mean, of course, there are cases where AI gets ridiculously misused, but then you also see very, very positive use cases of AI in multiple things. 4 years back, prior to pandemic, no one talked about flexible working hours or a work-life balance, which right now completely has taken over the discussion of the entire future of work. Whether tomorrow we will be working out of our offices, will we continue to miss that human element that we actually experience when we come to the office? Will we miss it? Or will we have a hybrid work culture? I think something which is completely, I mean, stuff like this. These are things which are changing and
So
extremely dynamic.
you're saying the world is changing very rapidly. This is not a question of predicting 10 or 20 years out, but you're saying in a matter of 3 to 4 years, the world is seeing pretty dramatic shifts. So as a venture capitalist, very important to keep your pulse on the future because you are investing for the future, for a future growth for of your capital. Okay, terrific. All right. So now that we set the context of this, where the conversation, what are some of the factors, as a venture capitalist, as you meet founders, as you explore companies, what are some of the factors and influences that you're hearing on the ground from founders that are influencing the future?
I think one of the things that clearly is established right now, that the basic development of technology in any sector is taken for granted. So tomorrow, if a founder comes and tells us that, in order to build a startup in this particular sector, I will develop the technology for it. With so much open source coding, with so much access to uh, building technology, I think the basic layer of technology is taken for granted. That no longer is, a mode, a jargon that VVCs use very, very, very frequently. But in simpler terms, it's the defensibility. So no longer is the defensibility the basic layer of technology. I think it boils down to the good old business case that combining technology, engineering, and a large addressable market is is that something which a founder can build in order to uh, base his startup on or build the foundations for his startup. It's no longer just about the technology. So what factors influence? It's a combination of a bunch of things, right? You have to have your customers in place. The technology is taken for granted. You have to have incredible marketing layer to it as well, because the Gen Z, the millennials, they have ridiculous amount of choices. Their attention span on their smartphones or on the move, it's so short that you have to just within that glimpse of a second, you just need to catch their attention to something, and obviously marketing solves for that. So you have to
So,
be out there, you have to be youth centric, you have to be technology enabled,
so
all of
you're
that.
saying technology enabled, the consumer is shifting, the consumer's behavior patterns are shifting. So that's one of the factors. What else are you seeing? Have you seen a trend in terms of the kind of companies out there? There's a lot of talk about ESG. I interviewed someone who works in sustainable bonds. This has become a really, really big thing. Are you seeing this from your viewpoint? Are you seeing more interest in climate and more fintech, and what all are you seeing in terms of trends that entrepreneurs are picking up on?
Uh, Definitely, the customers are or the consumers are moving towards sustainable choices. Uh, Whether it's a bottle that you're drinking water out of, whether it's the clothes that you're wearing, the daily accessories that you're using. Uh, for example, even the kind of society that you're living in. I think that's still some time away where we start making choices where we live around societies where we have water coming from sustainable sources, light coming in from renewable sources, and stuff like that. But I think in the near future, things have to coexist. It cannot be binary that I will only make sustainable choices, because a parallel track to that is support from government policies. And unless that is a very paramount layer for the government to build on, it's very difficult for consumers to make those choices in isolation. Excuse me. Apart from that, a lot of folks are also moving towards minimalism. They do not want a lot of choices. In fact, some of the most successful applications right now that you see today on our smartphones are the ones that have extremely limited choices. Where, because Gen Z is exposed to technology from day one, and most of these folks end up having so many choices. I mean, OTT, for example, is filled with choices, but then the UX, UI, all of that matters so much nowadays that it's another factor contributing to uh, how the consumer behavior is shifting.
Mhm.
Uh, ESG reporting obviously is is a factor, but I think it's still going to be some time before that becomes a critical component for making consumption choices.
Mhm.
It's definitely talked about a lot, but I don't think it's anywhere near making choices to consume a particular product or a service. Take, for example, fintech. You have your traditional banks where one could go and physically go and open accounts and talk to a relationship manager and explain your needs to them. Compare that with a neobank today. A neobank is completely virtual. There is absolutely no need to go to a bank. The approvals are faster. There is no regulatory uh, framework per se that is required. Of course, the RBI is now getting a lot more strict with some of their policies, But at the same time, the advent of some of these technology enabled financial services also was enabled by the government to make it easier for the consumers to start using financial services available to them. UPI is an incredible example of that. So, I mean, a lot of things are flowing in that direction.
Okay.
Deep, yeah.
I just want to make sure I touch upon what you're saying. So you're saying sustainability. You are seeing some consumers shift towards this, but you think there's still a long time before consumption will be driven by these factors, at least
I
in.
mean, for me, if I'm a parent that disses plastics, right? I cannot have my child playing with Lego all day long. I mean, Lego again is small bits of plastics again made from the same process as the plastic bottles. So that relevance of a certain mindset becomes very, very important as we, consume products and services.
And you're saying the government has a big hand to play in this. So if you really want to see all pervasive ESG awareness and consumption, then the government's going to have to step in a big way,
To be
much
fair,
like.
they are doing their bit, but in a country with a population of 1.4 billion people, and to make a uniform policy and to take all the states along subscribing to that policy is a bit of a task. And I think unless everyone plays their role in nation building, it's some time away. But we are getting there. A lot of positive signs.
Okay, so you see some movement there. Okay, and then you were talking about fintech and then new bank coming in, and there you're seeing that the government is supporting ventures like this.
See, the government, who's the regulatory body for the banks? It's the RBI. And uh, if you see what happened in the US with the collapse of the banking system over there a couple of years ago, compare that kind of an issue happening in a country like US for that to happen in India, the kind of impact that it would have on our political system, on our the entire industry, the industrial body, the way consumers move, there will be a ridiculous amount of resistance if we do not put policies in place. The RBI is rightly so in place to, whatever happened with Paytm right now. They have been warning them since 2020. And if they don't comply, I think there is a threshold which every regulatory body has to, sort of put it out there to a set an example in the market and to govern its own. I mean, protect its own vested interests in a nation as a whole, as against protecting one single rainmaker like a Paytm. So the government is extremely open. They're extremely democratic, but there has to be rules in place. There has to be certain frameworks in place. You can't be building in the gray. There it has to be complying with the regulatory frameworks for any fintech to be successful,
Okay.
and it's an
Okay,
ongoing process.
I want to stay on the banking thing, right? You were touching upon like from physical banks with counters and tellers, etc. We've now moved to uh, pretty virtual.
Virtual services.
So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen in the next near future, right? We're not talking about 15, 20 years because it's too far out. In the next 5, 7 years, where do you see this evolving to? Do you think that all these traditional banks are just going to absolutely shut shop and it's going to move to entirely virtual banking? What are emerging trends you're seeing? Let's only talk about fintech.
No, that's a question that we ask ourselves every day and try to find answers. But I think it will be a very complex interplay of a digital model, both physical as well as digital, because templatized work, the ones that have to be absolutely done as per templates, I think those will start getting a little more automated. They will get a little more tech enabled. And, for example, you no longer have to sign papers for making an RTGS payment. You can do that virtually online without any problems. The banks are also getting confident with certain guardrails that they will increase the limits of each of these modes of payment gradually as they work on the cybersecurity part of it, right? Uh, Short answer to your question is no. The virtual ecosystem will perhaps be a majority part of the banking system, but it will never replace the physical element of it. I mean, the regular banking services perhaps, but then there are so many things, the credit market of the consumer products, white goods that people continue to take loans for home loans and all of that. That will be a function of both physical and virtual.
I like your coin term, the fidgetal. The fidgetal world will continue to get bigger and bigger. And any other trends you're identifying in fintech? I mean, the fact that we 10 years ago we didn't make payments from our mobile phones, we didn't use internet banking, we didn't shop online. So these are like radical shifts in consumer behavior that most people are doing. Even the chai wala uses GPay, right? So this is not something that's privy to only the wealthy or the technology enabled. It's relatively all pervasive. Any other trends you're seeing emerging in the next 5 or 10 years in that sort of will shift consumer patterns because of fintech and the explosion that's happening in the fintech world?
I think a lot of things also like wealth creation, which earlier was restricted only to the high net individuals, right? That they would have this large chunks of money and they would invest in various financial products and get them handsome returns. I think that also is getting decentralized and becoming a lot more democratic than what it used to be even 5 years ago, for that matter. A lot of wealth tech platforms are there where even someone with a salary of say 10 lakhs per annum has an option to invest outside of the traditional asset classes of mutual funds or SIPs or some of these products, right? They have the option of investing some amount from their disposable income towards some of these investments. Uh, the access to that
Hmm.
is becoming very easy. We've invested in a company called Giraffe, founded by Vineet Agarwal and Saurav Ghosh. Uh, they are, I think, they caught on the trend very early, and they've been, democratizing alternate wealth creation platform very, very uh, with a lot of zeal and a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of different type of products. So wealth creation is one trend that we definitely see in the world of fintech. Secondly, I mean, can you believe that the penetration of insurance, something so basic as just a basic health insurance, it's ridiculously not more than 12 to 13%.
Okay.
And in India. And for the life of me, and what will the government do? The government is doing everything that they can with. I mean, today, if you go to any of these European nations or the US, even, if you ever, God forbid, have to check into a hospital for a emergency treatment, unless you have an insurance,
Right.
you don't get covered, you don't get preference. And thankfully, despite the population that we have in India, the response to an emergency in India is still, I would rate it way higher than any
Okay.
other country.
So from what I'm hearing, it sounds like people are going to be better off. All the changes you're talking about are addressing the middle and lower end of the pyramid, and you're saying they're going to have access to investment options. They're going to have more people under the ambit of insurance companies. So this abodes for a better future, at least for the middle and lower income, which seems to also be the larger target population for fintech companies, right? A lot of them seem to be wanting to address that consumer belt.
I mean, we are 65% today below the age of 40, and
Sure.
we will continue this trend at least till 2050. So I think it's the most obvious target audience for even fintech or even any other sector which directly affects consumption.
So I didn't mean age wise, I meant in terms of income levels, because,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Even the income levels, I mean, everyone aspires to be moving from in the entire value chain from the lower middle class to the middle class and the middle class to the upper middle class and so on and so forth. Thankfully, our job market continues to support it. Our industrial markets continue to support it. Uh, and we will see those trends across the financial spectrum to get that enabled to move from one belt to the other.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so I see a rainbow of optimism coming through, at least on the fintech side. Let's move to another area. You want to talk about climate, since it's, the word climate is on your platform everywhere. So
Yeah.
what are you doing in climate? What are you seeing as emerging trends? Have you invested in any companies that you'd like to talk about?
Vibha, when we started Capital A in 2021, we said that, look, we will. It's a new fund. I have never been a fund manager before. I've seen the private equity side of things, but that works very differently from how early stage venture capital works. And we said that we will pick up two sectors. One of them, the fintech sector, which is slightly more evolved. We've seen it mature over time in India with Razorpay, Paytm, PhonePe, BharatPay, and all of that. So that was slightly more predictable. It was a safer bet. Climate was something which we said that, look, no one is investing in climate, and we understand that the complexity of investing in climate startups is very different from investing in any other technology. So I think that is something that we picked up slightly early on. We were very fortunate to have caught the EV wave back in 21. We've invested in a bunch of EV and mobility startups. Uh, when I say EV and mobility, not necessarily the OEM brands manufacturing the bikes or three wheelers. I'm referring to largely the stick and shovel model where someone makes the battery packs, the motors, the software for it, or the charging infrastructure or battery swapping. So that's one element of climate where we say EV and mobility reduce carbon emissions, and they help in keeping the air clean. Another subsector or derivative of climate that we are extremely excited about is the space of solar. Uh, Solar financing specifically is something which the banks don't do very easily because it's a new sector and banks are not confident of underwriting an asset like that. So a lot of NBFCs have come and a lot of financial institutions continue to invest in solar. That is a very large sector, very fast emerging sector. We have invested in a company called Credit Fair, founded by Aditya Damani and Vikas Agarwal. Uh, from a regular BNPL, they have now sort of graduated to now picking up solar as a specific sector to finance. And the
So
last 2 years, we have seen,
these two sectors you've identified,
yeah.
let's stick to these electric vehicles and solar. So, from a futuristic perspective, since you invested in them today, what are you seeing as, upcoming trends? What are you seeing as? Are you seeing adoption of electric vehicles exponentially grow in India? Do you really think people are going to, is the charging infrastructure going to keep pace with the evolution of these, OEMs coming in? Is this even actually, environmentally sustainable, because the batteries are still being charged by conventional fuels, right? So where are you on this debate, and why are you optimistic about this? Is this really going to play out the way people are talking?
That debate is perhaps going to go on for, and it's not going to stop anytime soon, that we are extracting rare earth mineral to extract lithium and then make the battery packs and so on and so forth. The fuel price stabilization right now has put a bit of a, how do I say, it's a bit of a speed breaker for the adoption of EV because consumers are not incentivized enough to switch to EV. Earlier, the incentive was TCO, right? Total cost of ownership. If the total cost of ownership of a an ICE or a petrol vehicle versus a EV vehicle if there's a stark difference, you
Sure.
go for EV. Um, will it will it get will it will the adoption decrease? No way. I think the ball has got rolling so far. It will go through its journey of slow, fast, medium, and all of that. But we definitely see the adoption of EV vehicles across all brands, even the luxury brands, including Mercedes and BMW, and all of them are coming up with their EV variants, and they are getting picked up by the consumers. Similarly, solar has contributed to many housing societies adopting solar energy in their rooftops to at
Hmm.
least take care of basic lighting, even if it doesn't create a radical impact on their power needs in a large housing society, but to just take care of something like basic lighting for the society, the common areas, and everything. It is creating impact, and you are not really spending anything beyond the solar infrastructure that you initially invest in. The ROI is comfortably between 18 months to 3 years. Thereafter, it's in your pocket.
Hmm. Okay, and you see this continuing going forward. You feel there will be more and more emphasis, effort on developing solar-based power, or do you think it's a fad, like and or do you think it's going to still remain a marginal electricity producer, and then mainstream will not, it's not going to get
I,
a
I
mainstream?
like your point about the marginal and organic increase because that's what it's doing.
That's right.
It's definitely not a fad, but I think the entire power of compounding starts to take effect when that gradual bit by bit every year sort of makes a large impact over years. It won't happen overnight, but the adoption is clearly increasing every year.
Okay, okay. So you're saying there's a marginal increment, and then you'll see that compounding effect happen in this as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about your third sector. I was reading about a company called Ivory that you seem to have invested in. Is there a biotech angle to this? And what is this space, and where do you see this biotech, aging, anti-aging? Where are you seeing this going as a future trend?
Vibha, you would have seen that uh, the word anti-aging has been only restricted to cosmetics and all the products that we use on a day-to-day basis, whether it's your under eye cream or your face cream or whatnot. I think the real anti-aging or age tech, which again is a word coined by our startup entrepreneurs who are building in the uh, aging ecosystem using some form of technology. Ivory is one example of that, founded by again some incredibly talented people, Isaac and Rahul. Uh, I think, also the premise. Some of these age tech startups usually come from some personal experience, and that's what happened with Ivory on both sides of things. Even the founders had gone through some family members facing the bane of aging, and how do you sort of slow that down, or how do you navigate that? I think that with a combination of cognitive ability to think, to age gracefully, or to age or to slow down aging using a combination of clinical as well as non-clinical side of medicine. That's what they are building. Again, a very neglected uh, area right now in India, where senior care is more or less restricted to uh, you know the basic care that are provided by the children or doctors. But I don't think we are doing anything at the root to solve it. And I think that's what Ivory is trying to do. They are trying to get to some some basic elements of cognitive thinking and slow down aging.
Okay.
And
Where do you see this going as a trend in the future? do you think more and more consumers are going to want to use this stuff? You think that there's a lot of companies that are also doing, medicines and injections and dosages of different kind of vaccines, and and implements and wearable devices that can now track better. Massive movement, right, towards essentially elongating lifespans. Some saying, average lifespan will become 100. Some Elon Musk put out a statement saying that human being will live forever. It'll
Yeah.
be infinity. So where are you on this spectrum, and what do you see as, from your viewpoint again, where do you see this really going to?
Uh, as we get older, and I'm talking about our generation, we see ourselves getting sucked into this rat race of, managing our jobs and our careers and our aspirations and, our family life and everything. Uh, and more dependence on technology, from everything to switching on the air conditioner to operating the refrigerator to operating the TV, or to even address mental health concerns for that matter. Uh, I think the trend is clearly the children, or this, the children solving for it using a language they understand, which is technology, and then trying to get their parents to use it. Uh, the trend is definitely moving towards more and more children genuinely trying to solve for it using technology. And, of course, there will, with couple of things are helping right now is the entire remote working flexibility, which post pandemic, I think it's it's God gifted to every working individual, where they can sit in the comforts of their home along with their parents, take care of them, and still do the work, and earn their living. But there are various concierge services right now for seniors, where everything from getting groceries to going to the bank to solving household problems, electrician, plumbers, and all of that. You see a lot of startups also building in that space, where seniors prefer to live individually by themselves. Their children may be abroad, they may be outside of their hometowns. The trend is definitely moving on how technology can help seniors to solve their aging. The three or four platforms that seniors continuously use: WhatsApp, most popular ones. When we did our research, it was so cute. WhatsApp, Facebook, and WhatsApp, Facebook, and YouTube. And in our research, we found out the most frequently used platform was WhatsApp to send good morning and good evening messages. And it's, I think, the premise we picked it up from there to invest in Ivory, and how they can start as cognitive thinking ability, and perhaps move to different derivatives of aging.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. All right, Ankit, let's move towards the last segment of the conversation, which is on skill building as you plan forward, right? So, firstly, now that you work with so many entrepreneurs and you're neck deep in companies and organizations, etc., if you had to today, if you were in high school and if you had to go to college, what do you think you would study now that you have the benefit of all this information and you have your eyes on all these trends that are coming? What do you think you would study if you had to go back to get a college degree?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, by the way. Uh, if I had a choice to be my nephew and sort of go back to college, one of the things I would definitely urge my faculty to teach me is uh, financial uh, the world of financial knowledge. It could encompass everything from investments to how to open a bank account to how to operate a bank account, and what are the basics of the entire. We learn accounting, we learn finance, we learn statistics, but no one really goes and teaches you how to do investments in the stock markets,
Hmm.
right? I think that's something that one of the things that I would definitely like to uh, uh, at least one module could be that. Others could be really, trying to see if experiential learning, whether in the form of internships, whether in the form of vocational training. I think our industry and academia uh, partnership is still evolving. Uh,
I meant more in terms of a degree, like if you had to go back, keeping a pulse on the future, would you go become an engineer? Would you become a historian? Would you become a statistician? Like, what do you think you should become as you keep an eye on the future?
Today, if you ask your nephew or niece what do they want to become, you will get the most rad answer ever. They will say they want to become an influencer. Now, what do you do to become an influencer? You don't. I mean, you don't have to study media or you don't have to study any one particular field. But I think uh, engineering definitely helps to cover a lot of these areas very meticulously. But then again, not everyone is meant to do a particular degree or a course which they uh, don't intend to or they can't. I think it again depends on individual interests. Engineering would definitely be a lot more diverse, followed by a degree in computer science, which has some elements of artificial intelligence and automation, because ultimately that's going to become a go-to technology as we move forward. Um, the entire AI bit is a little uh, overtly used and abused, but I think we will start seeing some real use cases of AI as we go forward. So formal training in AI would definitely be extremely helpful.
Okay, so training in AI, computer science, engineering, if that's what matters.
Yes.
But many unconventional careers coming up that at least young people today foresee that being in. So difficult to predict. Okay, with that, Ankit Kedia, thank you so much for doing this. And it was terrific having this conversation. Wishing that all the bets you've placed on the future pan out exactly the way you've intended for them. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Vibha. Thank you for having me here.